4 years ago, the world experienced a global pandemic. Companies shut down, cities went silent, and students traded in their textbooks for laptops. As students were sent home, seniors in both high school and college were denied one of the best days of their lives, graduation. The one day that everyone in school looks forward to the most was ripped away from them right at the finish line. Artists and celebrities then decided to come together in a graduation special titled Dear Class of 2020. It featured personal messages from Alicia Keys, Barack and Michelle Obama, Taylor Swift, Billie Eilish, Beyonce, and an astronaut from literal space. As I sat in the four white walls of my house watching this special as an 8th grader, feeling the same way as high school and college seniors, I quickly realized that it wasn't for my class of 2020. My name is Tara Cooley, and I am a member of the Forgotten Class of 2020.
When I was in 8th grade and I got sent home for spring break because COVID shut everything down, it was a different learning experience, and it wasn't an ideal learning experience when that carried into my freshman year.
When I first came here freshman year, I could not imagine living at Culver any other way. I thought that for my next 4 years it would just be, social distance for the rest of my Culver career.
I know it was to keep us safe and all that, but at the same time it was I don't know, kind of a sense of you don't even know who you're around, but you're around them all the time.
My name is Raluchi Obioha. I'm from Wakanda, Illinois, and I was a member of the class of 2020 when COVID shut everything down.
I'm Mackenzie Tennell. I'm from Manassas, Virginia, and I was an 8th grader in the class of 2020 when COVID shut everything down.
I'm Sophia Alvarez. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I'm a member of the Forgotten Class of 2020.
I think my least favorite part of freshman year was probably the weekly COVID test.
We would all line up and get tested. I believe it would be every time we come back from a break, we'd get tested. Those who are positive for COVID, they get sent back home until they're negative. And those who are negative get to stay at school.
It was a little scary when you did see someone be abruptly taken from their seat and everything was wiped down and you asked hey, where'd they go? And it was just oh, they'll be okay. And that's all you heard.
It was really difficult just because, especially if you played a sport, you had to get tested 2 times a week. So not only did it take away a portion of your free time, but there were also pretty strict consequences if you missed it.
If from Monsters Inc., when the one guy had the sock on his back and everyone had to stop and the thing went over him and he got completely shaved, that's almost a feeling of you're oh my gosh, that person just got taken they had COVID, and it was really scary, but I mean, it was what we had to do to take precautions.
When we came to Culver, we had to do everything with our masks to ensure we don't get the virus. So even physical activities like running, push-ups and sit-ups, the CFT, we had to do that in masks, and it was much harder than it looks.
The next year, the following year, sophomore year, when we were allowed to have our mask off, it was so weird. It was you were almost a freshman again, meeting people for the first time, because you could have been talking to someone your whole time freshman year and been best friends, and you come back sophomore year and you're not what I thought you looked like.
I remember during a time when there was a really big COVID outbreak, you even had to wear the mask while you were playing sports against other teams, and I played rugby. So that was really difficult. Your mask would get ripped off, or you'd be sweating so much that it was really hard to breathe. And so I think that wearing the masks outside was really the least positive experience.
You didn't actually get to see someone directly eye to eye all the time, and I don't know, it was like you didn't actually really know the people around you.
Another thing that was also really difficult was the fact that we weren't allowed to go home for Thanksgiving freshman year. I remember the general feeling of campus was just really suppressed.
I remember specifically exactly where I was and exactly the time I was at first lunch, and I was with my friend Belle, and one of my friends came up to me and was have you heard? And I was oh my gosh, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. And they were speaking so fast that I just didn't even know what they were saying. I couldn't comprehend. And they were we're not going home for Thanksgiving.
Spending a holiday that is really the only point of it is to be around people that you love and are thankful for. Spending it on campus with masks really was probably like one of the worst things that could have happened for us.
Being at Culver, I felt more distant from my relatives, more distant from my friends, because we were all stuck in a little shell where we weren't allowed to explore outside of Culver or outside of the campus, or even sometimes go home.
A big privilege that Culver kids lost because of COVID was the privilege of going into town. And not only is it like a privilege to the students, but it's also a privilege to town because that's how they make most of their money, especially during like the winter season. And I can speak from personal experience. I would always hear like the seniors saying like, oh, when we get to go to town, or like when we do this in town, or this is in town, but not actually ever knowing what like town even looked like or what was there, except for like their stories. They made it seem so great, and I always wanted to go, but we weren't allowed to because of COVID.
All of the upperclassmen just talked about it so much, oh, I wish we could go into town, I miss it so much, I miss Coffee Co., I miss Papa's, all these things. And all of the freshmen, we didn't even know what those places were, so I think that once we came back sophomore year, it was like such a huge new thing for us. It was such a huge new experience. Like Culver probably had a huge economic boost because everyone was going to town all the time.
Since I was little, I always thought I'd be experiencing my like quinceañera, but because of COVID, I was stuck here for that part of my life that I always thought I was gonna have. It was really hard for me because I wanted to have the big quinceañera, like the big dress and the party and like with my family members, and instead I slept away my entire 15th birthday. And I still think about that really often. Sometimes I wish I would have gone back and like accepted the offer to go and get ice cream for my birthday with my friends, or accepted the offer that like my mom said she'd even drive down. But for me, like the whole experience of turning 15 as like a Mexican young girl, like turning that age is so special, and having that taken away because of COVID was so hard for me because I dreamed about that day forever. And I think I still will dream about it, but I think I came to terms at the end of the day that I'll never get to experience a Keats.
The first instance that I have of doing Culver Theater was called Every Night Live-ish. It was supposed to be a spoof on Saturday Night Live because we couldn't perform on stage due to the concerns with COVID, so we had to film everything. And in one way, it was really cool. It was majority student written and produced, directed. We made almost all of the props for it, stuff like that. But in another way, it was really kind of, I don't know the word for it. In another way, it was kind of lackluster, I think, because personally I love live theater, and so that's why I joined theater on campus, was to be able to act on a stage and kind of to play off other people. And I think that film is wonderful and it's a really great experience, but not only was it not what I signed up for, it's just a completely different way of acting.
I think going back, I can see that the whole developmental process from freshman to senior year, it's really shaped me a lot through leadership and being able to understand where people come from, people who have certain issues and how we can face them together. After all, we all did face COVID together and we emerged victorious. So going forth into college, I can take that aspect with me. I can take that memory with me and share it to those around me.
Because of COVID, I think that I definitely grew as a person. I took that experience to help me form better relationships with people and to appreciate that like close-knit community. Because we couldn't leave, we couldn't go to town, or we couldn't go home, we had to value the time and the people that was like around us and that we had. And I think I had the hardest time at graduation freshman year because I was always surrounded by those seniors, and most of my best friends came from that class because I was always with them and they were always inviting me, and the only place I really couldn't go with them was on Beeson. But otherwise I could always be in their room, or I could always go to the dining hall. I was always with them. And I think because of that experience, I hold my relationships with people, especially at Culver, a little bit tighter than I would anywhere else, because I really got to see what what friendships could be like when you are not away from them.
I think the whole larger Culver community really showed me that it does take a village to do even small things, you know? We didn't even know if we were gonna get to come to Culver our first year. It was so iffy. And the administration, the staff, the teachers worked hard to ensure that we still had the best education possible despite the constraints that we were given. And I think that especially just on a really personal level, I think seeing the change in the overall campus, in the people, and just in the way that we live over the past 4 years has showed me just how fast things can change, and that you really do need to savor every moment. To the forgotten class of 2020, I'm sorry that you had to be the blueprint. You know, for every global trauma or global change that's made, there's always someone who gets left behind, and I'm really sorry that it had to be you.
I hope that this graduation really means a lot to you, because it shows how strong you've been throughout the course of these 4 years.
To the forgotten class of 2020, I see you, I hear you, and I was you. And because of that, we all can only understand each other's growth. I'm so excited to see what we will do as we enter this next chapter in our lives. We are no longer forgotten. We have now just become the class of 2024.